Hi everybody, welcome back to today's video. I'm Nick, this is Polar Ice Creamery, and today we are gonna do another video about ice cream stabilizers. This time it's tapioca starch, cornstarch, CMC, GMS, and finally tarragon. I did a big stabilizer video over a year ago now, and it's my most popular video because people want to understand more about stabilizers in ice cream, how to make them last longer, what they do to your ice cream, and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of different stabilizers out there. Some are much more available in certain parts of the world. So going down this stabilizer path, I wanted to make sure that I covered all the bases so that no matter where you are in the world, and we have subscribers literally all over the world, you can access a decent stabilizer for your ice cream to improve texture, improve mouthfeel, and improve the longevity of your ice cream in your freezer as well. So without further ado, we're going to start with tapioca starch. Before we actually progress, I just want to say hi to, he's cool, isn't he? Yeah. Some people say he looks like me. Not enough grey hair for that. Anyway, we're going to start with tapioca starch and cornstarch. So starches are a very popular stabilizer in Asia. They're easily accessible. Most of them actually are produced over there as well, which is interesting whether you think it or not. What we're going to do is I'm going to split the screen in half, and we'll do one half for tapioca and one half for cornstarch. The left-hand side will have tapioca starch, right-hand side will have cornstarch. We're going to put up the chemical breakdown or the chemical structure of each one. Now, it's not quite as simple for cornstarch because there are different versions depending on the different elements that make up the cornstarch. But here we go, you can see there are some similarities. Tapioca starch is derived from the roots of the cassava plant, and cornstarch is extracted from the endosperm of corn kernels. The flavour and texture of either, this is where they get a bit different. Tapioca starch has no flavour and also imparts a very glossy finish. So if you're doing something like a pie filling with cherries and you want to keep that really nice clear finish, tapioca starch is the way to go. Cornstarch, on the other hand, has a strong flavour. Now, you see online, people say that it has no flavour. That's absolute BS. Cornstarch has a very distinct taste, and when you use it in recipes, you can tell it's there. If you look online at bloggers and vloggers, you'll see that they use cornstarch in their luxury hot chocolates or their Italian hot chocolates and things like that. Now, in Italy, yes, they do use cornstarch, but they also use other ways to thicken their hot chocolate as well. You go too far with that cornstarch and you get this really powdery, unpleasant taste to whatever it is you're making. Cornstarch also does not end clear. It has an opaque finish to whatever it is that you're using to thicken. So you may or may not want to use cornstarch depending on what your final result needs to be. The gelling properties of tapioca and cornstarch differ as well. Tapioca starch is very good at slightly lower temperatures, but it does not hold up well to continual heating, whereas cornstarch can take continual heating very, very well. So if you're doing something that needs to be processed at a high temperature a long period of time, you would avoid using tapioca starch because it would break down the elements that make it thicken the sauce. And then it won't go any further. And to some degree, it will actually start reversing. Whereas cornstarch can take that continual heating at a much higher temperature without affecting the final result. Tapioca starch and cornstarch are basically identical in the fact that they are both gluten-free, and people use them often in baking where a gluten-free result is required because they can improve some of the textures of some gluten-free flours. That's quite difficult for me to say. Gluten-free flours. So that's our basics for tapioca starch and cornstarch. We'll go into a little bit more conversation about them at the end. But what we're going to do now is move on to CMC. CMC. CMC stands for carboxymethylcellulose, and the cellulose is extracted from a couple of organic methods or products, but mainly wood. So what you're doing is you're taking a wood byproduct and they're extracting the cellulose from that and then treating it to produce this white powder. It is a complicated process, so I'm going to put a list up on here that will show exactly what is involved with making CMC. So first you start with your cellulose source, and like I said, predominantly it starts from wood fibers. Then you go through an alkalization process where the extracted cellulose undergoes alkalization to make it more reactive. And this usually involves treating it with an alkali such as sodium hydroxide. The next stage is esterification, where carboxymethylation occurs through the induction of carboxymethyl groups to the cellulose chains. This is done by reacting the alkalized cellulose with a sodium monochloroacetate. The next stage is the neutralization. So after the carboxymethylation has been done, the product is neutralized to obtain the sodium salt form of CMC. And then the final stage is the purification and drying, where the carboxymethylcellulose is purified and dried to produce the final CMC powder that you would buy in the stores. So as you can see, it's not a simple process, and both CMC and GMS really start to push the boundaries of what's a natural stabilizer. To some degree, everything needs to be processed. There are very few things in this world that don't need to be processed. But we are getting into the realms of multi-stage chemical reactions to produce something specific. Now, CMC is a generalized stabilizer, so it will hold on to that free water, it will stabilize your fat and water emulsion, it will increase overrunability, it will improve mouthfeel to a degree, and it also aids overrun much higher than some other stabilizers would, but it can become quite fake and artificial at that point. One of the big downsides to CMC is it's got quite a strong taste. It does impart a flavor onto your ice cream, and if you're making a light flavored ice cream, then you're going to struggle, because although flavors are dulled in dairy, and that's just the fat content, if your flavor of whatever it is you're making, let's say you're making a nice strawberry ice cream, natural strawberries broken down, macerated with some sugar, you've added your mix into your dairy base, you've already lost some of that strawberry flavor from that point on. If you then introduce CMC as your stabilizer, you're losing more flavor because that CMC will impart its own flavor over the top. So you need to be careful when you use CMC. CMC is often used in conjunction with GMS, and that's where we're going now. GMS, glycerol monosterate. That is what it stands for. Again, this is really pushing the boundaries for something that could be described as a natural stabilizer. But GMS is more of an emulsifier than a stabilizer. And that's why it's often used in conjunction with the CMC, because it can stabilize your ice cream on its own, just not very well. But it is actually a reasonably good emulsifier. Is it any better than less thin? No. I don't think it is, but each to our own. So without further ado, let's pop our screen up and go into the details of how GMS is made. So GMS, or glycerol monosterate, is a synthetic compound derived from glycerol and stearic acid, both of which can have natural and synthetic sources. So glycerol, or glycerin, depending on how you want to describe it, is a trihydroxy sugar alcohol that can be derived from animal or plant sources, and it's commonly found in fats and oils and can be obtained from sources like vegetable oil or animal fats. Then you have the second part, which is stearic acid. Stearic acid is a saturated fatty acid that can be found in various animal and plant fats, and it can be derived from sources such as cocoa butter, coconut oil, or palm oil. The synthesis of GMS involves the reaction between the glycerol and stearic acid, leading to the leading to the formation of glycerol monosterate. So when used in combination with CMC, GMS can have a pretty good result, but it seems to be that the cheaper ice cream brands use CMC and GMS. And that is likely because they can get it in much higher numbers. So we're now going to go on to our final one for today, which is tarragon. Tarragon has got a resurgence over the last few years because it's quite expensive as an ice cream stabilizer. And I'm going to put a picture up here on the screen of a tara tree. And this tree is native to Peru and other South American countries. The tara tree itself produces pods much like locust bean gum, and it is actually processed in very similar ways too. So it's dried, ground down, and then filtered to produce this white powder that you use. Tara gum is excellent because it does two different things. It will stabilize and has emulsifying thickening elements as well. So tara gum though is expensive. It's difficult to get hold of and it is expensive. If you are in North America, you're going to struggle to get it. Which is strange because it does grow in some parts of the US on the West Coast. But considering it's closest to the US than a lot of other parts of the world, I don't understand why it's so expensive to get in North America, but it is. But it also is one of the best standalone stabilizers. I'd probably actually say it is the best standalone stabilizer that you could use. So if you were to look at standalone stabilizers such as xanthan gum, guar gum, and tara gum, of those three, tara gum is definitely first. And then there's, personal opinion over xanthan gum and guar gum because they're really quite similar. But it really boils down to, between those two, whether you need to heat the base or not. If you don't need to heat the base, then you've got cold process, both of them, great. But if you are heating the base, guar gum will thicken much harder and much quicker. So again, it comes down to personal preference. But what exactly does tara gum do? Here we go up with our little box again. It is a texture improver, and that's because it increases viscosity. And as we know and have learned over the years, that a slight increase in viscosity will increase the creaminess and mouthfeel of your ice cream. It is a stabilizer, so it prevents the separation of water and fats in your mix, which also is what an emulsifier does. So this is why tara gum is really, really good. It reduces ice crystal or large ice crystal formation, much like locust bean gum does, and it is really good at it too. And with that in hand, your ice cream is much better in the mouth with small, tiny ice crystals. With large ice crystals, it's icy and horrible, okay? So tara gum will help to keep that ice crystal size down. That, as a byproduct, then gives you a much nicer mouthfeel. And it also helps with your overrun as well. So it will increase your overrun, but not as much as some of the others like CMC would. But it does help you get a little bit more out of your home machine. As we have established, home machines don't really give you the same amount of overrun that a commercial machine will. So you might only get 20%, 15% out of some of the machines. Some of the home machines, you're going to be lucky to get 5% overrun. But the reality of it is, if you use something like tara gum, a CMC, xanthan gum, guar gum, you will then increase your overrun, which will give you a slightly lighter ice cream, much more in tune with what you would buy from the likes of Haagen-Dazs and Ben & Jerry's and Ample Hills and Jenny's, etc. And it starts to produce a more natural ice cream. The dense pudding-like ice creams with sub 20, 15% overrun, very dense, very hard to scoop. I mean, they do taste great when you actually get them out, but it's a balance, isn't it? You can get much more ice cream out of your mix with a slightly higher overrun of say 30 to 40%, which is about industry standard for store-bought ice creams. The cheaper brands, obviously, as we know and have established, we get to 100% and even higher, and that's when the names change from ice cream to frozen dessert. But what we've done there is we've just gone over the next group of stabilizers, and out of all of them that we've discussed, tapioca starch and cornstarch I personally don't use in ice cream. I don't find I don't like using cornstarch in ice cream because it imparts that flavour. Tapioca starch just doesn't have the same efficiency as some of the other stabilizers. So you can buy it, it's cheaper, but it really does struggle to thicken, control the ice. It will definitely thicken, so it will increase viscosity, but it just doesn't do as good a job as controlling ice crystal formation and improving mouthfeel and overrun. So I generally don't use the starches in ice cream, but if that's what you have available, then stick to tapioca starch as opposed to cornstarch. A, because it doesn't have a flavour. B, it's probably a bit easier to dissolve and incorporate. And C, you can concentrate on the viscosity rather than how much flavour your powder is going to add. CMC and GMS, if that's all you've got available, then go for it. You know, they will do the job. They will do the job reasonably well. You have to use both. You have to combine CMC with GMS. But if you're into the more natural approach to stabilization, and by natural approach, I mean using natural products that go through probably one process of drying, powdering, processing, like locust bean gum, tara gum, you know, that kind of thing, xanthan gum, then I probably would avoid CMC and GMS. But again, there are certain parts of the world that both of these are likely the only options available to you. So if you do use those, again, consider balancing that out. So you would want to start somewhere along the lines of a 60-30, 60%, 30% ratio of CMC to GMS and play with that depending on what ice cream you're making. Some flavors of ice cream will do better with more emulsifier, like chocolate ice cream really needs more emulsifier than others. Some vegan recipes will definitely need more emulsifier because of the separate sources of fats and the type of fats that you're using. So if you're going to start looking at vegan recipes, then you really need to concentrate on the best ways to stabilize and emulsify your recipe. And there's a big difference. When you do plant-based recipes, one of your main fat sources will likely be something like coconut oil. If you use deodorized coconut oil, which I do because I don't like all my plant-based recipes to taste like coconut, then you need a way to stabilize that fat and make sure that the emulsification between that coconut fat source and water, predominantly being what's in your nut milks, again, they're at 1% to 3% fat, the rest is mostly water, then you need to look at an emulsifier to make sure that those two water and fat elements are really well joined and combined and don't separate down the line. So the emulsifier will join the two together and it will help to keep it stabilized, but then you add the stabilizer and it will help to keep that chain strong over the whole process and not separate when it's in the freezer. And then finally, tara gum. Like I said, I love tara gum. It's great. I don't use it that often in recipes because I ran out back in the UK and I've just had to import it over from Europe. It's turned up. We're going to start using it and I'll explain a little bit more in each video as I do it. If you want me to talk about what stabilizers I use in each recipe, then let me know in the comments because I change it up. Almost weekly. I will use a different stabilizer for a different recipe to see the result. You use the stabilizer that you have available to you. If you're unsure and you're using something like Starches, you will need a lot more tapioca starch or cornstarch than you would for any of the other stabilizers because that's just their process. You know, they need a lot more to stabilize the free water. So if you're in doubt, pop in a comment, send me an email, and we'll make sure that you can create the best ice cream possible with the ingredients that you have available where you are. And don't listen to everyone saying you must use this and you must use that. No, that's rubbish. I had a guy argue with me until he was blue in the face, losing his temper left, right and center because he demanded that it was better to use guar gum, locust bean gum. You know, it's rubbish. You use what you have, what you want. If you don't want to use stabilizers, don't use them. your ice creams are going to deteriorate a little bit over time. You know, there's no two ways around that, but that's just what will happen. But if you do want to use stabilizers, then there are premix available. You know, I love the special ingredient stabilizer. It's great. Is it perfect? No. But is it really good? Yes. And will it do the job every time? Yes, it will. Taro gum is like that as well. Xanthan gum is like that. Guar gum is like that. You know, but they have pros and cons. So balance this video with the first stabilizer video and your individual ones for xanthan gum, guar gum, locust bean gum. Balance those videos out, determine what is available to you and how best to use it. Again, if you're unsure, pop me a comment and I will help you, but you need to let me know what ice cream you're making. Let me know more details so I can help you create the best ice cream that you can. All right, so with that in mind, thanks very much for watching. Hopefully this second stabilizer, actually is the second big stabilizer video, but hopefully these stabilizer videos are helping you at home to create the best ice cream that you've ever had. I mean, the comments that I get from people is incredible. People love the turn that their ice cream making at home has taken after joining in this ice cream family. And what can I say? You know, I am here to help you all create the best ice cream you can with the least fuss. So thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time when we make another delicious ice cream.